Now, so many questions plague our minds after each session, especially since conducting a conference is not a minute task and requires much needed planning, work, and implementation. So undoubtedly, there is bound to be doubts with regards to the entire proceedings. To answer your questions crosswise the sessions conducted so far and other relevant queries that you may have, next up we'll be having a riveting panel discussion. Let me introduce our eminent panelists for the day. Dr. Lidikoti Jacob, Professor at NIT Calicut and Chair of Conference Activities Board of IEEE KLS Section and Chair of Awards Committee of IEEE Malabar Subsection. Dr. Bijuna Kunyuke, Professor at TKM College of Engineering at Kollam and Chair of IE and PEL Chapter of IEEE KLS Section. Next up, we'll be having Mr. Satish Babu, President and co-founder of INAP and Chair of Awards Committee, IEEE KLS Section. Welcome to all the honorable panelists and thank you in advance for taking your time to join us today. I would now like to invite Mr. Sean Jose and Mr. Sriram Mankat, IEEE professionals and Cardinal Lexicon members of Malabar subsection, and very passionate volunteers who strive to accelerate the IEEE vision and mission to moderate the discussion.
Thank you, Dina. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
So once again, welcome Lilukudi ma'am, Bijuna ma'am, and Satish sir for the panel discussion. We have a couple of questions what we received from the participants yesterday and today. So we will start with some of them. So first question I'd like to ask you, I'd like to know everyone's perspective about it. So I'll start with Lilikudi ma'am. Ma'am?
Yes.
Yeah. So throughout the sessions, every speaker mentioned about planning things based on our anticipated size of the conference. So what we understand is the size is meant by the number of accepted papers or number of chances of number of papers submissions for the conference. So if a committee is starting a conference for the first time, because if it was a previous time, they might have previous conference chairs and others to support and guide them. But if any college or association is planning to have a conference for the first time, how do we how do we judge on anticipated size of the conference? Because all the speakers were mentioning every details based on this. So how do we start with it? I would like to have the perspective starting from Deligudi ma'am.
Anticipated audience, it depends on if it is a first time conference, it is difficult to decide that, because first time conference depends on yeah, if it is already established a reputed conference, then we have some idea about what would be the audience, because the previous editions orders will be submitting papers and all. No, but if it is a first time conference, then it depends on how much promotions you have done, to what extent of audience you have reached out and all those things. Yeah, it depends on how rigorously or aggressively you give the promotion and the announcement of the conference, and to what extent you have reached out. No idea otherwise.
Thank you, ma'am. I would like to request Bijuna ma'am to share your perspective.
Yeah, actually, when we started off with every conference, the first time, whenever we started off, we thought of roughly a number of 100 or 150. And I think that number is always thought of as the goal that we want to set. So we'll be working towards having a 150 papers published in that conference. So if you want to have 100 to 150 accepted, means at least 4 times that should be the number of papers that you get as submission. So I think the goal that you can set and work for is the best number. So 100, 150 is something that you can always go for when you're going for the first time. This what I'm saying from my own experience.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And Sadiq sir.
Thanks for the question. I think my answer would be that although the conference is new, the conference organizers are not new. They are probably people with a lot of experience who have organized other conferences. So they know what they're kind of planning. They know the topic and the domain. And they will definitely know, in the sense of the kind of lead speakers and all that, what kind of crowd it is likely to attract. So it is unlikely that a brand new conference is going to attract very large numbers of papers. So for example, in Kerala section, we have had the biggest was maybe TenCon, IndieCon, etc., which have, I remember 2012 IndieCon, we had more than 900 papers. But that is because it's an established conference. And if you were to launch a new conference today, it first depends on how popular the topic is. If it's a very broad topic, then maybe you'll have more responses. If it's a very narrow topic, you may not have that much of a response. Secondly, what are the kind of speakers that you're proposing, or what grand scale are you kind of putting out there, the kind of image that the conference has got? Now, this is actually known to the organizers, because the organizers will have some idea regarding what kind of conference they are planning. So it is not all that difficult. And if everything fails, one can always do what Bijuna has suggested, that, okay, we plan for about between 50 and 100 papers and plan everything else accordingly. And early enough, we will know the trends. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I would like to call Mr. Sean Jose to continue the session.
I will also request all the panel members to put forward your insight on this question. So from an organizer point of view, would you provide insights on which IEEE entity we need to approach first for the sponsorship, whether it is OUs like region or sections or societies? To start with, Lilikudi ma'am, could you please provide your point of view?
Yeah, first they have to reach the session, because now the session will be giving necessary, because there is a conference activity board for the session, and the conference activity board will give the necessary instructions or guidance to approach other OUs, IEEE OUs, if needed.
Thank you, ma'am. Bijuna ma'am.
Exactly. When it is from Kerala or any other, the section is the first entity you have to approach, and you will get sufficient guidance from the section itself, from the conference activities board, as to what is the pattern you have to go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Bijuna ma'am. I think this is a very common answer, so I'm moving to the next question. Sriram, could you please?
Yeah, thank you, Sean. So I think I'll ask this question starting with Sadish, sir. This is a question from a participant. For a technically co-sponsored conference, the payment to IEEE section covers a GST, but publication charges does not include GST. Do we need to pay GST at source? This is more specific.
This is more a technical question, which should be answered by maybe somebody with the accounting background. Okay. My own inclination is that GST probably needs to be paid, and it's up to the organizers to include the GST, or in the fee structure, we have to clarify whether it's included or not. But I would think it has to be paid. It's a tax to the government, so it needs to be paid. But I may be wrong, so I'll pass it on to the other two.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Lilikudi ma'am.
I think we don't have to pay. I think there is a provision to tell the IEEE that we will pay at. Okay, I think in that case, no, yeah, we have to take that GST also from. I mean, we have to also the organizers have to pay the GST locally.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Bijuna ma'am.
Yeah, it is the publication fee is fixed by the IEEE, but whatever we are taking, we are actually including the GST also along with that. So the conference organizers have to accept the GST also. So we do usually two things. Either we fix the registration fee in a way that the GST is paid by the participant, or in some cases, we take a round number and the GST is paid by the organizers. Both ways we have seen happening.
Okay.
But to the IEEE side, it's a fixed value.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. And I'd like to invite Sean to continue.
Okay, there is another question from participants on how much time it will take to get a decision on applications approval, probably from the section conference activities board. Lilikudi ma'am.
CAB will be taking a 1 week time only, 1 week maximum, 1 week or 10 days, depending upon the availability of the or convenience of the CAB members. After that, no, we will be giving the feedback to the organizers, and the organizers then how to submit the application online. IEEE online application form they have to submit, and they will be contacting from IEEE MCE. They will be contacting the technical session chair, section chair, and the chair will be giving an approval in a few days time. In case, in fact, the CAB chair will be reminding the section chair in case of any delay, and it will typically take another 1 week. So once the section chair also give the approval, then the MC will be approving. So all these things together will take typically some 3 weeks maximum, not more than that.
Thank you, Liliputty ma'am. Over to you, Sridham.
Thank you, Sean. So we have another query which is connected with one more query. So usually IEEE conferences are conducted in the physical conference mode, but because of COVID pandemic, it is being converted into virtual conference mode. So we all expect that the pandemic will get over in another 2 months or 3 months, either with the pandemic or the vaccine. So after that, are we allowed to conduct a virtual conference, or it has to be made physical for approval from the IEEE? What is the protocol? And which one is beneficial? I'd like to start with Bijna ma'am.
IEEE has now allowed us to have the virtual conference. So even after the pandemic, it may continue to be there until and unless there is a change in the rules. We may be allowed to do the virtual conference. In the other way, you can have a hybrid mode also. You can have a virtual mode allowed for those who cannot travel, and physical for those who can travel. Probably that will come as a coexistence. I think Satish Babu sir will be able to say a little bit more if he.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. So Satish sir.
Yeah. So first of all, the assumption that the pandemic is going to get done in the next 3 months is absolutely false. It will take most of 2021, and it will spill over into 2022, especially for countries like India, because vaccinating 1.3 billion people is no joke. And we also have to remember that many parts of the world, including Africa and Latin America, are very much behind. They haven't even started making plans for vaccination. So to cover the world's 7.3 billion people is going to take more than a year, definitely. So that's the first thing. So at least in India and many other parts of the world like Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, the pandemic is going to linger on. It's going to drag on for much longer. So 2021, we will see conferences mostly virtual. There could be a few hybrid conferences where the travel bubble. Now, the travel bubble is a kind of special construct between countries where they say, okay, we are safe, like New Zealand and Australia. They create a travel bubble, and that means there's free access to people up and down, in which case people can travel from these two countries to a common place. But the other participants are going to be participating virtually. So that's one. Secondly, for many reasons, especially for environmental, ecological reasons, virtual conferences are far better, far more sustainable, and IEEE is also realizing this. We have been pushed into the virtual mode, but the choice of virtual is going to continue. Now, the hybrid mode could be a possibility for our conferences, say Kerala section. Suppose the next 6 months or 8 months, Kerala is free from COVID, 0 cases, and we want to organize a physical conference. We could do that. But then there has to be a provision for people to join remotely. The remote thing is likely to stay for very long. And ultimately, in the scheme of things that we see now, that is going to be more permanent and more popular than the conferences where you have to travel. Because you also do away with a lot of other barriers, for example, visa or travel funds. These are all major limitations for people from countries like India. Now, in the virtual mode, none of this exists. So this is a great liberating thing for scholars from India. So my own take from the present reading of the situation is that the virtual mode will continue as an option, even when COVID is completely eliminated. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I would like to request Liliputty ma'am to add more to it.
Yeah, actually, there are both plus and minus points regarding physical and the virtual conferences. You can check out the new MC site for planning. In fact, they have given some guidelines, and also there are plus and minus. What are the benefits and the disadvantages of having virtual conferences, and all those things are there. So I think hybrid may be a best option, even when the physical is possible. But anyway, that they can check out the MC website regarding the guidelines for the guidelines.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am. I kindly request participants, if anyone have more queries, please put in the chat box so that it will be considered once the pending queries are done. So I'll kindly request Sean to continue.
Lilikuti ma'am, while during your session, you mentioned like we cannot assure that all the papers will be published in the IEEE Explore. So in that case, some papers will be considered for poster sessions. So how much relevant will be the certificate of participation compared to the paper is not published in the Explore?
Can you repeat the last point?
When there is a case where the paper is not published in the Explore and the author has already participated in the conference, how much relevance will be the certificate of participation compared to the author who could have published the paper in the Explore library?
Typically, I am not aware of any such cases of rejecting a particular paper, but in case of any such concerns from the IEEE, they will be querying with the publication chair and the program chair, and they will clarify the point, and finally the paper will be accepted based on some, the criteria. So I'm not very much clear about rejection. Because if it has already been properly, review comments and everything we can give from the reviewers comment. The experts' comments can be given to them, and also the plagiarism. Main reason could be the plagiarism checking, if something has been added after the plagiarism checking. So that could be the only reason I find. Otherwise, no, the quality of the paper has already been thoroughly scrutinized, so there shouldn't be such problem.
Bijuna ma'am.
Even I don't think we have had an experience like that. Once they cross-check the plagiarism has been properly done and the reviewing has been properly done, we don't find anything like what Lilikuti ma'am said. Once the checking has been done and then they have modified, then there will be a problem because the plagiarism checking, the screening test would have gone wrong. Otherwise, usually they don't have any problem. And if there is any, if they find any, they usually contact the TPC and the publication chair. And we usually, because every time after the conference, we are supposed to give a report also as to how did we go with the process. So that gives a clear picture to them whether we have done it in proper manner or not. So if that order is correct and we have sufficient data to be given to them that we have processed it in this way, then usually this problem will never come. So this has to be kept as a point for everyone. We have to have that reviewing properly done with, say, if we are saying our policy is that out of 3 reviews, 2 should be in one direction, then only we'll take the decision. That has to be properly maintained.
Thank you, Bijuna ma'am. Sadiq sir.
I agree with both Dr. Lilikuti and Bijuna. The point is that IEEE conferences are known for their rigorousness. We are a professional society with a great deal of rigor to our disciplines. And once we have the conferences, which is a very prominent activity of IEEE, we have to ensure that the process is very clearly followed without leaving any room for any kind of errors of this kind. So, well, that's it.
Thank you, Sadiq sir. Over to you, Sriram.
Okay, thank you, Sean. So I'd like to add one question, which is actually an extension of some answers said by some of our previous speakers. If we want to have a financial co-sponsorship from any IEEE organizational unit, in particularly any IEEE societies, are we supposed to move through our section and make the society chapter of our section sponsor it, or is there any other protocol that we have to maintain? Also, a slightly off the record question in addition to it. is there any recommendation that certain societies might promote conferences better than other societies? I'd like to start with Satish sir.
Yeah, so the point is the societies in IEEE are of very different sizes, budgets, and patterns of behavior. We have in Kerala section, for instance, we have very small societies like SSIT, which is almost broke, and we have very large societies like PES or Computer Society. Now, some societies have specific budgets for supporting activities at the section level. And if suppose we want to organize a conference and we want to raise some funds from say PES, the most obvious way to do it is to consult the PES chair and see if this is possible. We know that PES does have funds. Can we get some funding for our program from PES? Now, this is not necessarily an official protocol. It is just a matter of consultation within the section itself by talking to the person, lift the phone and talk to him or her, and that's it. You'll get an immediate kind of response. Now, regarding the aspect whether which society can give how much, that is very variable, and it also depends on the kind of conference. For example, Computer Society, if you want to set up a conference on women in computing, which is very different from say blockchain related subjects. Women in computing, there could be an interest because IEEE is trying to promote the whole IEEE, not just CS. It's trying to promote women in engineering. So there could be some separate funding that is there for that. Now, if you're organizing a blockchain conference and you go to Computer Society, you're not likely to get any funding like that. So you have to be sensible in your subject matter, the process that you adopt. You sound out your immediate colleagues, and the section leaders, the chapter leaders in the section. And I mentioned that SSIT is very small, but still SSIT's flagship conference was done by Kerala section, and we also generated a lot of funds, and we gave it back to SSIT. So we have been giving back also. It is not that we've been only receiving funds. Thank you.
Hello, thank you, sir. So, Lilikudi ma'am, could you add something more to it?
No, I don't have anything to add to that. The process, Sadish sir has already mentioned in elaborate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. How about Bijuna ma'am?
Yeah, as Satish Babu said, it is not the society that is important. What is the theme with which you are trying to organize the conference? That theme is more important. So in line with that theme, whichever society is of help to you, you can approach. And in most of them, they have a separate wing itself to support the conference activities. And the procedure always goes through CAB, through section, through society chapters of the section. That will be the right way to do it.
Thank you, ma'am. Over to you, Sean.
Probably this will be the last questions. Looks like already we have it's 12:30 past and we have covered most of the questions. So this is a question for all the panel members. So if we don't have a choice of IEEE in hand because of financial constraints or other problems, which will be the other publication options we can look into? Bijuna ma'am, can you please?
Basically, we are talking only about IEEE. And what you said, if there is any financial this thing, any flagship conference when you are going to be a part of, when you bid for any flagship conference, the financial burden on you will be very small. So the other publications, I'm not aware of at all to give you any suggestions.
Sure, Bijuna ma'am. Sadish sir?
Yeah, so there is a bit of an ethics issue here if we are sitting in IEEE and using an IEEE platform for a conference and then publishing it elsewhere. So I'm not sure whether that can be done. In my opinion, that may be, kind of treading on the edges of what is ethically possible. But I'm aware that there are perhaps joint programs, joint events with other societies. And for example, IEEE Computer Society has joint programs with the Computer Society of India. It used to have, at present there's none. So in those cases, maybe there are some possibilities. But otherwise, a pure IEEE conference, I don't think can go to other kind of publications. Thank you.
Thank you, Sadish sir. Finally, Lilikudi ma'am.
Sean, actually, no, I missed the question because of my unstable network connection. So I missed the question. Can you please repeat the question?
So if you don't have the choice of IEEE, or if you don't going for IEEE, do we is there any other publications we can go for conducting the conference?
So I assume that they don't go for the technical co-sponsorship of IEEE.
Yes, yes.
Do they?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, they don't go for the IEEE technical co-sponsorship. Then they can contact any Elsevier or Springer or any other entity for their publishing their conference proceedings. No problem, because how does it matter to IEEE? Because they don't have any concept. I mean, there is no relation. I mean, they don't want any sponsorship from IEEE. Then the organizers are free to contact any other entity.
Thank you, ma'am. I think we are done with all the questions. I request all the participants to post more questions in case it's not answered. I think we are done with all the questions. Thanks a lot to all the panel members, Bijuna ma'am, Sadish sir, Lilikuti ma'am, for giving your insights on all the questions.
It was a pleasure, Sean and Sriram. Actually, you did it. You did a wonderful job.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Over
Yeah,
to you.
Yeah, I'm actually very happy to see that we have a very good interaction, even in this virtual mode. Because usually when we did the conferences in the virtual mode, what was missing was this informal networking, which we used to enjoy during the physical conferences. But I think this way we are actually trying to even cross the barrier in that way also, having some informal interactions along with the virtual. Thank you.
One thing you could consider in IEEE conferences is that in many other conferences, non-IEEE conferences, we also have a social, along with the technical sessions, there is a social session where there is a lot of room for interaction among people. So that's something that we can try out in some future conferences just to see if that makes a difference. Thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sean Joss sir and Sriram sir, for moderating this edifying and engaging panel discussion. Thank you to all the panelists, Dr. Lilikuti Jacob, Dr. Bijuna Kunnu, and Mr. Satish Babu for your very valuable words. I extend my sincere gratitude to all of you for taking a big chunk out of your time to engage with us. It has been an absolute honor and pleasure to have you with us here. Please accept a small token of gratitude and appreciation from our side for being with us during our journey.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you once again to all of you. Thank you, moderators.